Hi guys, thanks again for the continued support at Mobile London. Thanks for all the views on YouTube and the podcast that we've started recently. I'm here today with Rob Joseph, the lead Android developer at Drest. Rob, thanks for taking the time out today. Obviously, for the guys who don't know, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Rob. I'm currently the lead Android developer at Drest. I've been doing Android since 2011. I started learning in 2011. I didn't start doing it professionally till 2013. And I've been doing it ever since. So that's like 7 and a bit years now. So quite a while, yeah.
Yeah, quite some time. Yeah, definitely. And Rob, obviously, I know we spoke before about how you got into Android.
Yeah.
Obviously, you went to university, you did computer science,
Yeah.
but it was more sort of self-taught yourself, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I did a computer science degree. When I did my degree, it was before Android and iOS were even a thing. Like no one was teaching that. It was basically learn it yourself. So I did a computer science degree that kind of gave me a foundation of just basic programming, I guess. And then I started so straight out of uni, I went into a role as an IT consultant, which is basically the name that they give you when they want you to do anything related to computers. So some of it was like tech support for websites. Some of it was maintaining apps in programming languages that don't even exist anymore, like VB6, and it was horrible. And while I was there, I ended up basically just learning for myself because I had an Android device how to build Android apps. So like I had a good foundation, but essentially it was from scratch in terms of the platform and learning Java. That's kind of how I got started, and that's.
So like you say, you were working that IT role, which was pretty much anything, but then you sort of picked up in the spare time. Obviously, it makes sense if you've got an Android phone to learn Android development. And with that, before you found your first sort of role in Android, had you already made any of your own applications? Did you already have a portfolio, or?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, this is kind of the thing that I advocate to people that are starting now, but so it's hard when you get started in something new, where even like coming out of uni, you just finished uni and you're trying to get your entry level role in whatever it is. And every role you go for, they're like, well, you need 1 year's experience. And now you're going to get 1 year's experience if nobody's going to give you that first year's experience. So when I started learning for myself, I basically started building apps that I wanted and just released them on the Play Store. And I think I did that so I started in 2011. I quit my job in 2012. And so I think I'd released about 4 apps before I got my first gig. But by the time I had my first gig, I had a portfolio that I'd made for myself that I could then show this is my experience. So I don't have, quote unquote, official experience working for someone else, but you can definitely see I can do the job. That's definitely what helped me get my foot in the door to actually get a job. Because otherwise it would have been, taking a really entry level job, maybe if I could get it, and then kind of working my way up the ladder. Whereas releasing my own apps was kind of like a kind of a little bit of a shortcut to getting straight in, so people can see what you can do and take you on straight away.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, it obviously helped having that sort of evidence that you knew the whole sort of mobile life cycle. You'd had experience with publishing apps and working on apps and sort of going from there. Obviously, when we spoke before, I know you mentioned your first role was actually a contract, wasn't it? You've not actually worked as a Perm employee per se. You've done a lot of contracts for that.
Yeah, so I've actually never been permanent doing an Android role. So my first role was a contract, which I kind of fell into it by accident. So I knew when I quit my job to do Android full time. I didn't specifically know that was going to be contract work. So I think I basically gave myself like a 6 months window, which was either my own apps are going to be able to sustain me, so I don't need to get a job, or I need to get a job, or I have to go back to being an IT consultant. By the time, so about 6 months after I'd quit my job, I had an app that was on the App Store that was making about maybe like £500 a month. So I was quite happy with that, but obviously, that's not serious earnings. So then I just started applying for roles, and I applied for one that happened to be a contract role with a startup. And I went in for the interview, and they were happy with my experience. And then, as soon as I got into the contract world and I realized, I can change as often as I want. I can do all these different roles, and I don't just have to pick one job and stay there for a while. Then there was no reason for me to go to be a permanent. And like the contract world, there's so many jobs going all the time. So really the only reason I would go permanent now is if it was for a company that I really, really wanted to work for.
Yeah. Okay. And you've obviously worked on a lot of different projects doing contracting. If you had to sort of say top 3 sort of projects or applications, have you got them on the top of your head? What ones have been for you?
That's a really good question. So I think probably the first job I did, which was for an app called Sport Lobster, which I think it's something else now. It was initially a sports social network. So that was probably one of the good ones, because without knowing at the time, it was actually a good company to work for. But because it was my first contract, I had no idea. And also it was kind of a fun project to work on, and it was a startup. So you have that kind of startup work vibe. You know, you get in at 10 o'clock rather than having to be in the office at 8:30. So that was fun. And then I don't know if I've got, like, that would probably be in the top three. And then I think top right now would be where I'm at right now at Drest. Because I think, like, one, it's a really interesting product, and the company's probably the best company that I've worked for. But also it's kind of like the pinnacle of everything I've learned. I actually now get to put into one product. So it's kind of like all the experience that I've had over the years is kind of built up to being able to actually work on this project and do the work that's asked. And being like, this is my first lead role as an Android developer as well. So this would probably be my favorite right now. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Did you go into Drest as a lead contract, or you sort of went up?
Yeah, no. So I went in as just an Android contractor. There was a few of us. I think there wasn't specifically a lead when I joined. And it was kind of, by the time that role came up, I was probably the most senior here. But I like to think that I got the role because they think I could do the job, and not just because I picked the most senior guy. But yeah, I didn't come in as a lead. I came in as just as a senior Android developer, and and then I went on to be lead.
Fair enough. Yeah, like you say, obviously you're a leader at the moment. Are you in a big team at the minute, or how many people are sort of in your team at the minute?
So in our team at the minute, I think there's about, I mean, there's a lot of people in the company. On the Android team, I think there's probably 6 or 7, maybe. Okay. So like a decent sized team, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I guess obviously contracting, obviously the way we see the contract market, it's you normally see a lot of senior developer roles. It's not likely that there will be leads, is what I'm seeing at the moment. So definitely a good little gig you got there. With contracting as well, do you find it's giving you an opportunity to work on the latest sort of techs, or you've constantly been like getting the latest knowledge, those sorts of things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the reason that I like contract work is, well, one is because I like to travel, so I don't have to be full-time employment and keep going back to my employer and say, hey, can I get 3 months off to go traveling? I could take a 3-month contract. I can go travel. Obviously, coronavirus has put that out the window, but in general. And then the other side of it is you get to pick and choose what you work on, and you get to work. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the roles are with the latest technologies. Like, a lot of startups, they don't hire permanent employees. They hire contractors because they need to get on, like, they need to get their product moving fast. And the fastest way to do that,
need someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, you got to hire the most experienced people that you can. So you get to do that. And then you have all the fun of working on different projects. And if you like it, you might have the opportunity to stay or extend your contract. And if you don't, there's also that, there's not that awkwardness where you have to essentially quit. You can just say, I don't want to renew my contract. And they're totally on board with that, because there's another contractor waiting right behind you that's ready to come in. So I think for me, contracting is the flexibility that it gives you. And all the people that I spoke to as well, that in terms of perm versus contract, is mostly the reason that people like to go perm is kind of for security. So, you know, if you have a family and you need to know there's always going to be that paycheck come in, as opposed to contract work, it works both ways. So I could say, I don't want to renew, but they could also say they don't want to renew. And if the market goes quiet, then you lose that paycheck. So it's kind of a balance, but for me, it's worked really well so far.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we kind of see a lot of people, like you say, security. Once they've got a family, they need that sort of constant benefits, things like that you maybe don't get as a contractor. That's understandable. But with yourself as well, obviously, I know, speaking with you, your experiences, you've worked on site. You've actually had a lot of remote work as well, haven't you? So obviously, not just sort of because of COVID, you've worked remotely a lot. How do you find that sort of work remote? How do you get around things?
I mean, I love it. So I spent probably the first 4 years working in an office, which was totally fine, because, like I said, the companies that I worked for was a lot of startups. So the office vibe is totally different to a corporate. So that was really nice. But I always wanted to kind of angle towards the location remote work, so that way you can, like, I can work from a coffee shop if I want to. I don't have to get up super early to get on the train to go into London, so that I can get to my role, all of that kind of stuff. And it was kind of a transition where I worked for one company for, I think, 3 months, and then they wanted to extend. And I said, I'm happy to extend, but I'm only happy to extend if I can get a couple of days remote, and they were fine with that. And then I did that. And then my next role was a couple more days remote. And then eventually I got to where I am now, which was full-time remote. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I love it. And in terms of the actual working thing, I've always been of the opinion that there isn't a really good reason that you need to be in the office, especially doing what we do, which is we work from a computer, and my computer's here. There's no benefit for me to be in the office other than if I want to be around other people. And I know some people have a preference where they like to be in an office. Some people have a preference where they like to be in a coffee shop. So it kind of simulates an office because you're around people, but at the same time, it's at your own leisure. But I mean, nowadays, and I think COVID has kind of proved it to a lot of companies that thought or were of the opinion of you can't work from home because you're not productive, that it really doesn't make any difference. If people have the tools to do it from home and they're happy to work from home, then yeah, I find that works really well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you say, I think you working remotely, but before at Drest as well, so it hasn't really affected sort of the work or how people are sort of trying to function from home, because a lot of companies are trying, obviously, equipment, things like that, trying to work out how they're going to do calls. But you guys are pretty set up, Zoom calls, things like that, Microsoft Teams, constantly.
I mean, from my point of view, like the infrastructure is there for everyone. You don't need fancy camera setups and fancy microphones. Like you need a webcam, you need a microphone, and then there's a whole different suite of apps that you could use to do video calls. I think it's more just kind of getting your mindset around. It's basically the same thing, but you're doing it from a computer as opposed to being in the room. And then obviously there's things like etiquette involved. So, you know, when you're in a meeting, people can jump in and it's free for all. And when you're on Zoom, you can't do that because as soon as you start talking, it literally cuts someone else off. And then they stop and then and so there's etiquette and stuff around it. But yeah, I don't see there's any reason why most companies can't be remote. And I feel like from things that I've read online as well, and from people that have now worked from home that didn't do it before, there's a lot of companies that have now realized that it's just as productive. So maybe there's not that much of a reason to force people to be in the office. And especially when they take into things like office space, you know, you're paying for office space. Some companies pay for office space just for people to go and sit on their computers. And suddenly you save all that money by letting people work from home. And, you know, maybe you hire a WeWork once a month to do a meetup or something. So.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, if you haven't got that office space, the equipment, you can get laptops, things like that. There's all different ways around things. And I think, like you say, a lot of companies are working now at the point where they are realizing that they can function remotely. So I think a lot of people are going to offer that more, even if it is just a few remote days a week, sort of moving forward. Obviously, with your subcontracting, things like that, I know you spoke on Mobile London before, didn't you, about your own applications, and you've had a lot of success when publishing your own apps to the markets. With like your applications, how many is it now that you've actually, roughly how many have you actually published to the market?
So I think in total, since I started, it's over 20. I'm not sure the exact number. I think on the Play Store right now, there's 6 that are still up, that are still maintained. Because I've been at it since 2011. So across the years, you know, some of them, the apps drop off or they just don't get maintained anymore. Some of them, the restrictions of what you can do on Android change. So the apps don't actually work on newer versions. So there's no reason to maintain them. But I think I still have 6 on there right now. And I still have 1 that generates like a decent amount of like passive income each month. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, always good. What's been the most popular one, would you say, that you sort of published?
The most popular one was, so I had an app, I think it was in 2013 actually. Sorry if you can hear the lawnmower outside. There's a guy literally mowing his lawn right now. I had an app which I published in 2013 called Floatifications, which was basically, so Facebook had released an app, their messenger app, and they'd added this thing called chat heads, which was when someone sends you a message, instead of getting a regular notification, you'd get a little floating head on the screen with the avatar of whoever sent you the message. So I basically took that idea and I created an app that did that for everything. So, you know, if you got a WhatsApp message, it would create a little bubble on the screen with whoever sent you what. And that got really popular. I think it did like 100,000 downloads in the first 2 weeks or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it did really well. And yeah, like a bunch of cool things happened out of that because in the end, I ended up with some Facebook engineers emailing me and asking me if I wanted to interview for Facebook and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool. And yeah, I maintained that one for a while. And then at some point, it kind of just went on the back burner behind work. And then there was a bunch of people that released similar apps that essentially were better than mine. And I didn't want to spend the effort trying to catch up. So I kind of just directed people to theirs instead. But that was definitely probably the most popular one. It made a bunch of press. It did quite a lot of downloads in a short amount of time. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. Sounds like that one. Yeah, got a lot of positive sort of feedback, and it was well used. What would you say is like the longest app that you've been constantly running, or do you just constantly upload new ones, or what one have you?
The longest one I've got is an app that's still on the store called Read It To Me. So that was actually the first app that I ever released. And I released it because when I was going to this job that I hated, and you'd be on the train and you were squashing with all these people and you've got your headphones on, and someone would send me a message and you can't get your phone out to see it was. So I basically built an app so that it would read the message to me in my headphones. And it kind of evolved from there. And like, yeah, I still use it today, and it still has a decent user base. That's the one that generates a little bit of passive income. Because
is it?
Like it's really useful for things like if you're in the gym and you've got your headphones on, you don't have to check your phone, you can see who's messaged you. If you're driving, it will read the message to you, and then you can reply with your voice and stuff. So yeah, that's the longest running one that I've got that I still maintain.
Oh, nice. And most of your apps that you've published, then do you usually charge a subscription, or is it free, or have you done all different?
I've done a bunch. So when I started, the really popular thing to do was to release a light version of the app, and then a paid pro version of the app with extra features. And then that kind of transitioned into, you have one version of the app where you've got a trial of features that you can buy, and then you've got features that you can keep forever that are free. And then, so I kind of adopted that as like the freemium approach. And then I also adopted, so Read It To Me, for example, used to be a one-time payment app, which was fine. And it worked really well. And the people that paid for it, they still get to use it forever for the price that they paid. But what I realized was that it's a lot of effort to maintain the app for, like, right now it's 9 years. And if you only have a one-time payment, then unless you constantly have new users coming in, then you're basically just maintaining it for people that essentially paid £1.99, 9 years ago. So I kind of transitioned that into a subscription model, which was, I think there's a lifetime price that you can pay, which is a little bit higher, or there's a subscription which is cheaper. I think it's 97p or 97 cents, and then that's like a recurring yearly thing, which is basically just for me to maintain it and not be at a loss, essentially. So that's kind of the approach that I go through now. That's kind of what I would recommend people to do if they can, is, one-time payments are great, especially if you don't want to make money from the app and you just kind of put it out there. But if you're going to be maintaining it for a long time, you have to think of the effort that costs you versus what you're actually going to get from it. And then, I would definitely say the subscription model works best. And then also, because you can give people tiers, you can pay 20p and you get one feature, or you could pay £1 a year and you get a whole bunch of other features. So they have more options as well.
Yeah, and like you say, something like 99p is yearly is probably not much of a big ask either. Exactly, it's about a year. It's just saying someone will sign up to, and it'll just constantly be rolling. I get what you mean. That is probably a better approach. I think when we spoke before as well, for people who probably didn't see the last Mobile London, you did a lot with advertisement for your own apps, didn't you? Like you spoke to a lot of people. You had a lot of different approaches, like maybe not my standard way.
Yeah, so when I started, I used to be on a forum called XDA Developers, which is still alive and doing great, and it was an Android forum. So I was always on there just because I was super interested in Android, so I'd be on there reading new apps that people had built, and new versions of different Android OSs that are coming out and stuff. And then that's basically where I got the most feedback, because what you used to be able to do, and I think you can still do it now, is you can create an app and you can just put it on the forum, and then people will download it and be like, hey, this is really cool, but I wish it did this. And I wish it did this. And what I kind of realized from that is that you need to be constantly talking to the people that use your app, rather than assuming that they like this feature or it works perfectly. And then what it comes down to the end is like reviews. And that was kind of the talk I've given before. And that's kind of where this all comes into it, is you want to basically be getting feedback from your users before they start leaving you bad reviews, so that you can fix things or you can improve things. And likewise, if you're asking people to pay money, then you want to make sure that they're paying for something that they actually want, and not they're going to pay 97p and in a month they're going to be like, this is rubbish, it doesn't work, and leave you a negative review. So I do a bunch of different things. So like forums, so Reddit or XDA Developers is a really good one, because obviously Android app, so that's a good one for that. I have beta communities for the Read It To Me app. So people can download the latest version of the app before it's out, which is really useful for me, because I get to fix things that might be broken before it's released to the wider public. And then the users in turn that are in that particular group, they feel like they're getting features before everyone else, so it kind of works in everyone's favors.
Early release.
Stuff like that. And then also email support is that's one that I found that was really big, especially when I started, because unusually, because I never do this, but people will actually email you and say, I really like your app, I wish it did this. And then, so I, being naive, just used to reply and be like, oh, that sounds great, I'll build that in the next release. And you'd get an email back from them, oh my God, I've never had a developer reply to me, because they're obviously doing it with everyone. And, you know, you send an email to WhatsApp, they're not going to reply to you, but you send an email to, as far as they know, I'm a whole company. They don't know it's just one person that released the app.
Yeah.
And then you send an email reply to them saying the thing that you've requested is actually going to be in the release, and they're super excited. And now they're going to go and tell more people about the app. And, you know, that feature comes out and they're going to go and tell people this was my idea. So it's just kind of a way to like create a community around what you're doing, so that you can get that. That's basically the way that I did it. And that's what's kind of maintained the success of my app so far.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you say, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Sorry.
Nice.
Sorry about that. Yeah, like you say, it obviously what works out. What does it take up much of your time, would you say? Like keeping maintaining all of these?
Yeah, not really. I mean, most of the apps I have right now are, well, all of the apps I have right now are pretty mature. So really, it's probably a once a year thing to kind of update them to the latest versions of different SDKs and the latest Android version. Most of them, apart from that, there's not really any maintenance, because they're basic, because they're not super new apps. They're basically what you see is what you get. So people get them based on what they do or they don't. It's not like they get them at a really early kind of MVP stage and expect them to be built on. So from my point of view, there's not that much maintenance. And then, you know, if I created a new app, that would probably be a different story, because you obviously have to get to that maturity level where you're confident to just leave it and know it's going to be okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you say, it's, at least you enjoy what you do. Like, obviously, a lot of guys who work sort of day in, day out with Android or iOS, for example, maybe they just wouldn't do the personal side of things. But yeah, it's definitely sort of enjoy what you do. And like yourself, I think it's worth mentioning, obviously, you've started your own podcast as well recently. Obviously, tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. So it's called the Coffee and Coding Podcast, and it's basically about app development. It's kind of a similar vein to the way that I did my apps, which is I really wanted so I listen to I think I'm subscribed to like 80 different podcasts right now. I listen to podcasts all the time. That's basically what I'm doing while I'm working. And I wanted a podcast that was about app development, you know, interviewing people that have done, you know, they've released their own apps, or they're really high up in a particular company, and just that have got interesting things to say about app development that I wouldn't necessarily find out unless I worked with them. And I didn't find anything like that. So I basically just started my own. So we're 4 episodes in. We're 4 episodes in right now. I think I've got another 5 guests in the pipeline. So it's a weekly episodic podcast. It's on everywhere. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Like, if people are interested, they can Google it and they'll find it. Or coffeeandcodingpod.com. Also, if you go there, it will take you to the right place.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely put a link when this is obviously all released for people who are interested. Be worth obviously checking that one out as well. But Rob, thanks again for taking the time out today. Really appreciate that. And yeah, like I mentioned, obviously if anyone's listening and wants to check out Rob's podcast as well, there'll be links on LinkedIn to sort of follow. And keeping up to date with Mobile London. I'll put the links in there for the meetup as well. But thanks again for your time today, Rob. And we'll speak soon.
Yeah, awesome.
Good,
thanks a lot.